good evening, and welcome, wherever you are as you listen tonight, and however you came to find this quiet corner. I'm so glad you're here. Perhaps you're already settled in bed, with the covers drawn up and the room grown dim. Perhaps you're at the close of a long and wearying day, or resting somewhere far from home, in the late and silent hours when almost everyone nearby has already fallen asleep. Before we begin, there's one small thing I'd love to know. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? If you feel like it, leave a little note below to say hello and let us know where you are. There's something quietly lovely about the thought of so many people, spread all across the world, settling down to rest beneath the same wide sky at the very same hour. And if these calm recordings help you unwind and drift off at the end of your day, a gentle like and a quiet subscribe help this little channel more than you'd think. Now, let me tell you where our thoughts will wander this evening. Tonight, we are going to follow a ribbon of light, the soft, shifting glow that hangs in the skies of the far north, the lights that people cross whole oceans and wait out long, cold nights just to see. We often call them the northern lights, and they are one of the gentlest and most beautiful things the sky has to offer. But to understand where they truly come from, we have to travel much farther than the north. We have to go all the way to the sun, to our own restless, roaring star, and follow the invisible journey of the wind it breathes out across the dark, all the way down to the top of our air, where at last it kindles into color. It is a story that ties the calmest sight in the night sky to the most powerful thing in all our corner of space. And I think, by the end, it may leave you looking up at both with a little more wonder. There is nothing here you need to follow closely, nothing to study, and nothing to remember. There is certainly no test at the end. If anything, I hope this feels less like a lesson and more like a slow, drifting story told in the dark. And if you find yourself falling asleep somewhere along the way, long before we reach the end, please don't feel you've missed a thing. Drifting off is exactly what this is for. It would be the loveliest possible way to spend the night. So settle in and make yourself as comfortable as you can. Let yourself sink into the pillow. Let your shoulders come down and soften, and let your eyes close whenever they'd like to. Take one slow breath in and let it gently out. And let us begin far to the north, on a cold and quiet night, beneath a sky about to catch fire. Picture first the place where these lights are seen. Imagine a night in the far north of the world, somewhere near the top of the map, in the cold and open country where winter nights stretch long and dark, and the air is clear and still. The sky above is deep and black, and thick with stars. The land below lies quiet under snow, and there is no sound but the small sounds of the cold. You are standing out under that immense sky, wrapped up warm, your breath rising in soft clouds, simply looking up and waiting. And then, very softly, something begins to happen. Low along the northern horizon, a pale glow appears, faint at first, like the last light of a sunset that has no business being there at this hour. You might almost mistake it for a distant town, or a bank of cloud catching some far-off light. But it grows, it brightens and lifts, spreading upward into the dark, and slowly it takes on a color, a soft, luminous green, the tender green of new leaves, glowing gently against the black of the sky. It stretches out into a long band, a great ribbon of light lying across the north, and then, as you watch, it begins to move. It ripples, it sways. It gathers itself into folds like a great curtain hung across the heavens, drifting and shimmering as though a slow wind were breathing through it. Rays of light reach up from it toward the stars. The whole sky seems to come quietly alive, glowing and shifting and dancing in perfect silence, high above the sleeping snow. This is the Aurora, the northern lights, and there are few sights in all of nature that move people quite the way it does. Those who see it for the first time often find themselves gone very quiet, or laughing, or in tears, without quite knowing why. It is so large, so soft, so alive, and so utterly silent. It does not roar or flash. It simply glows and drifts and folds and fades high overhead in colors that seem almost too gentle to be real. Greens and roses, and now and then deep violets and reds. And it is never the same twice. It might last only a few minutes, a brief pale arc that rises and sinks again. Or it might go on for hours, filling the whole sky, curtain upon curtain, brightening and dimming and reshaping itself all night long. People travel great distances and wait through many freezing nights for the chance to stand beneath it, and those who do rarely forget it. For most of human history, no one had the faintest idea what it was. It hung there in the northern skies, beautiful and strange and completely unexplained, and people did the only thing they could. They wondered, and they told stories about it, and we'll come to some of those lovely old stories before the night is through. But the true story, the one we've slowly uncovered, is in its own way just as wonderful as any of the old tales, perhaps more so, because the soft green light drifting over the snow, it turns out, is not born on the earth at all. It begins its life 93 million miles away on the surface of the sun. And to understand how it comes to be glowing above you on a cold, clear night, we have to leave the quiet snow behind and go all the way out to our star. We see the sun nearly every day of our lives, and perhaps for that very reason, we hardly ever really think about it. It rises, it crosses the sky, it warms our faces and lights our days, and it sets again, so faithfully and so often that it becomes a kind of background to everything, easy to forget. But the sun is worth stopping on, tonight of all nights, because it is the source of the lights we're chasing, and because it is, quite simply, the most powerful and important thing in our whole corner of space. The first thing to understand about the sun is that it is a star, an ordinary star, much like the countless points of light you see scattered across the night sky. Those distant stars look tiny and cold, only because they are so unimaginably far away. Our own star just happens to be close enough to warm us and light our days, and so it looks to us not like a pinprick, but like a great blazing disk. If you could somehow travel out to one of those faint nighttime stars and stand near it, it would blaze just as our sun does. And if you could travel far enough from our sun, it would shrink to a single quiet point among all the others. The sun is not something different from the stars. It is one of them, our own, near at hand. And it is enormous, in a way that is genuinely hard to hold in the mind. The sun is so large that if it were a hollow ball, you could pour more than 1 million Earths inside it and still have room to spare. More than 1 million. Our whole wide world, with all its oceans and mountains and every place you have ever been, is next to the sun no more than a single grain of sand beside a great glowing beach ball. It is by far the largest thing in our neighborhood of space. So large that everything else, all the planets and moons together, are only crumbs left over around it. When you feel its warmth on your skin on a summer's day, you are feeling the touch of something almost beyond measure, reaching across 93 million miles of empty space to rest gently on the back of your hand. It is worth pausing on just how completely the sun rules our little corner of space. Everything near us belongs to it and answers to it. All the planets, our own Earth among them, are held in their great circling paths by the sun's steady pull, swinging around it endlessly, each at its own distance, like a family gathered close around a single fire. We do not feel ourselves moving, but we are, carried around the sun on our own wide, patient circle, the whole year long, as we have been every year of our lives and every year before us. The sun is the anchor of it all, the still center around which our entire world quietly turns. And it is, above almost everything else, faithful. The sun has been shining, in very nearly the same steady way, for billions of years, long before there were any people, or any animals, or any green thing growing, back when the earth itself was young and bare, and it will go on shining just as steadily for billions of years yet to come, long after this night is forgotten. It is older than every living thing that has ever been, older than the oceans, older than the ground beneath you, and it has kept pouring out its light through all of it without pause. There is a deep comfort in that kind of steadiness. Whatever else changes, the sun rises. It has never once failed to, in all the long history of the world. Nearly everything gentle about your world traces back to that one faithful star. The warmth of a summer afternoon, the light you read by when it pours through a window, the green of every growing thing, the very air you breathe, all of it comes, in the end, from the sun, given freely across all that distance day after day, without fail. We are, every one of us, children of that star, kept alive by its steady light. And tonight, in the far north, that same star will sign its name across the sky in soft color, offered to the night side of the world while it sleeps. That warmth and light take a little while to reach us, though they travel faster than anything else there is. The light leaving the sun's surface must cross all that great distance to get to us. And even at the tremendous speed of light, it takes about 8 minutes to make the trip. So the sunlight falling on the world this very moment is not new. It left the sun some 8 minutes ago and has been racing across the dark ever since. There is something rather lovely in that thought, that the sunshine is always a few minutes old by the time it arrives, a little message of warmth sent across a wide gulf, always slightly delayed in the crossing. And the sun is not a solid thing, like the earth beneath you. There is no surface there you could ever stand on. The sun is a huge ball of gas, gas so fantastically hot that it glows fiercely white and gold, hot beyond anything in our ordinary experience. Its glowing surface is thousands of degrees, hot enough to boil away any metal or stone in an instant, and its hidden heart, far down inside, is hotter still, hotter than we can easily imagine. Deep in that heart, under crushing weight and unthinkable heat, the sun makes its light and warmth, and has done so steadily and reliably for billions of years, and will go on doing for billions more. It is an old and faithful furnace, our star, pouring out light in every direction into the dark. But it is not, as we are about to see, a calm one. From here on Earth, 93 million miles away, the sun looks perfectly serene. It is far too bright to look at directly, of course, but glimpsed low and red through evening haze, it seems a smooth and quiet disk, calm and unchanging, the very picture of steadiness. And in the ways that matter most to us, it is steady. It has poured out its light at very nearly the same rate for an immense span of time, and we could not be here otherwise. But that smooth appearance hides something quite different. Up close, the sun is not calm at all. It is a churning, seething, restless place, forever boiling and heaving and breaking out in storms. Our star is alive with motion, and it is that restlessness, in the end, that lights the northern skies. Think of what the sun is made of. Gas so hot it has become something fiercer than ordinary gas. A hot and electric soup, endlessly stirred by the tremendous heat welling up from within. The whole surface of the sun is in constant, violent motion, like a pot boiling over on the grandest scale imaginable. Great masses of hot gas rise up from below, spread out, cool a little, and sink back down, over and over, so that the surface is covered everywhere in a restless, shifting pattern of rising and falling, a seething skin of fire, forever remaking itself. Nothing on the sun stays still. It is one of the most turbulent places we know of anywhere. And running all through this hot, churning gas is something invisible, but immensely powerful: magnetism. The sun is deeply magnetic, laced through and through with mighty magnetic forces, the same basic kind of force that turns a compass needle or clings a magnet to a fridge, but on a scale beyond anything we ever meet in daily life. Because the sun's gas is hot and electric, and because it is always churning and turning, it tangles and twists these magnetic forces as it moves, winding them up tighter and tighter like elastic bands being twisted round and round. And where those magnetic forces gather and grow especially strong, they can hold back the heat rising from below and cool a patch of the surface a little, and that slightly cooler patch shows up against the blazing gold around it as a dark spot. These are the famous sunspots, dark freckles that come and go on the face of the sun, each one a place where the tangled magnetism has broken through and held back the fire. They are not truly dark, only a little cooler and dimmer than the fierce brightness surrounding them, so that by contrast they look like shadows. Some are small, others are far larger than the whole earth, great dark blotches you could drop our entire planet into and lose it. They drift slowly across the sun's face as it turns, and they wax and wane in number over the years, in a slow rhythm we'll come to later on. And they matter for our story, because sunspots are the marks of that pent-up magnetic tension, the places where the sun's twisted, tangled forces are strongest and closest to snapping. Where there are sunspots, there is trouble brewing. And when that pent-up tension finally lets go, the sun does something spectacular. But before we come to its great storms, we need to meet something the sun is doing all the time, quietly, whether it is stormy or calm, the endless wind it breathes out into space. Here is something about the sun that almost no one thinks about, and yet it fills the entire space around us all the time. The sun is not only pouring out light, it is also, constantly and in every direction, breathing out a faint, ceaseless wind. Not a wind of air, like the breezes we know, but a wind made of tiny pieces of the sun itself, streaming away into space without end. It blows past the earth every second of every day, and has done for as long as there has been a sun. And it is the invisible river that carries the makings of the northern lights to our door. Let me explain it gently. The sun's outer regions are so blisteringly hot and so restless that the sun cannot quite hold on to all of itself. From its seething surface and the faint, even hotter halo above it, a steady stream of the tiniest particles, pieces far smaller than any speck of dust, smaller even than the atoms that make up the air, the very smallest scattered bits of the sun's hot electric gas, is forever boiling off and flying outward. This stream never stops, It flows away from the sun in all directions at once, out past the planets, filling the whole of space around our star with a thin, invisible, ever-moving current. We call it the solar wind, the wind from the sun. And though you have never felt it and never will, you are bathed in it always. It is blowing past you and past the earth this very moment, and it moves astonishingly fast. This wind streams away from the sun at something like 1,000,000 miles in a single hour, a speed so great it is hard even to write down, let alone to picture. At that pace, the particles that leave the sun's surface come racing across the 93 million miles to the earth in only a few days. So there is a constant delivery, always arriving, pieces of the sun, flung off its hot surface, sweeping outward across the dark, reaching the earth a few days later, and streaming on past us into the deeper space beyond. The sun is very slowly breathing itself away into the cosmos, a little at a time, and that breath is always washing over our world. Now, most of the time, this wind is gentle enough, as these things go, a steady, ordinary breeze of particles, blowing at its usual pace. And most of the time, as we're about to see, the earth is well protected from it, sheltered behind an invisible shield, so that the wind flows harmlessly around us and we never know it is there. On the quiet nights, when the wind is calm and steady, the northern lights, if they appear at all, are soft and pale, a faint green arc, low on the horizon, coming and going. But the sun does not always breathe gently. Remember all that pent-up magnetic tension, all those twisted, tangled forces gathering around the sunspots, wound tighter and tighter until something has to give. When that tension finally snaps, the sun does not merely breathe. It erupts, and it hurls out into space not a gentle stream, but a sudden, roaring gust, a storm. Sooner or later, in a region where the sun's magnetic forces have wound themselves up tight and tangled, the strain becomes too great, and the whole knot of tension gives way all at once. When that happens, the sun lets go of an amount of energy that is almost impossible to describe. In a matter of minutes, a patch of the sun blazes up far brighter than the fierce brightness around it, releasing in that short burst more power than our entire world uses in a very long time. This sudden flash of brilliance is called a solar flare, a great flare-up on the face of the sun, where the pent-up magnetism has finally broken loose. It is one of the most powerful single events that ever happens anywhere near us. And often, along with that flash, something even more important for our story is thrown off. The same violent unknotting can pick up a great cloud of the sun's hot electric gas, billions upon billions of tons of it, a mass so great the numbers lose all meaning, and fling it bodily off the sun and out into space. Picture that, a great cloud of the sun itself, heavier than a mountain many times over, torn loose in a single convulsion and hurled outward across the dark at tremendous speed. It goes racing away from the sun, this great gust of storm, expanding as it flies, a huge billowing wave of particles sweeping out through space far faster and far thicker than the ordinary quiet wind. It is, in every real sense, a storm blown off the sun, a squall in that endless solar wind, only unimaginably large. Most of these great clouds fly off in some direction that misses us entirely, out into the emptiness, where there is nothing to be troubled by them, and we never know they happened. Space is enormous, and the Earth is a very small target, and the sun throws its storms every which way. But every so often, one of them is flung off in just our direction, aimed by pure chance straight down the line toward the Earth. And then, a day or 2 or 3 later, having crossed all those millions of miles, that great gust of storm arrives at our world. It sweeps in and strikes the invisible shield that surrounds us, and presses against it, and rattles it, and pours its racing particles along it. And when a storm like that arrives, the northern lights, which on a quiet night are only a faint, pale arc, can flare up into the most spectacular display, brightening, spreading, blazing into greens and reds and violets, spilling down from the far north into skies that almost never see them, dancing across the whole heavens as though the sky itself had come alive. So this is the beginning of our chain, the first link in the long journey of the light. Our restless star churns and tangles its own magnetism, winds it tight around its dark spots, and now and then snaps it loose in a flare and hurls a great storm cloud of itself out into space. Some of those storms come our way, but between the sun and the soft green glow above the snow, there is still a great deal of journey left. And there is, standing in the storm's path, the thing that protects us, and, at the very same time, makes the lights possible at all. To understand the northern lights, we must now come back home, to the earth, and to the great invisible shield that wraps our world. Come back with me now from the sun, across all those millions of miles of empty space, home to our own small world. Because the earth, it turns out, does not face the sun's ceaseless wind unprotected. Wrapped all around our planet, invisible and silent, there is a shield, a great, unseen guardian that has stood between us and the sun's wind for billions of years, and without which our world would be a very different and far harsher place. It is the same shield that makes the northern lights possible, and it comes, of all places, from deep inside the earth. You may know that if you take a simple compass, its little needle will always swing round to point the same way, toward the north. It does this because the whole earth behaves, in a quiet way, like a giant magnet, with an invisible magnetic force reaching out from within it and wrapping around the entire planet. This force streams out from near one pole, arcs all the way around the world through the space above us, and curves back in near the other pole, enclosing the earth in great invisible loops, like the lines you might draw around a ball. We cannot see it or feel it, and most of the time we never think of it, but it is there always, a huge and gentle web of magnetism enclosing our whole world and reaching far out into space around it. And where does it come from? It is made, remarkably, in the very heart of the earth. Far, far beneath your feet, thousands of miles down at the center of the world, there lies a great core of metal, mostly iron, and the outer part of it is molten, a deep, hidden ocean of liquid metal, slowly churning and flowing in the dark. And moving metal like that, turning and flowing deep inside the earth, quietly generates this magnetic force, in much the same way that motion can be made to make magnetism in the machines we build. So the shield that guards us from the sun is woven, ceaselessly, by the slow turning of an iron sea at the very center of our planet. It is a lovely thought, in its way, that the calm light drifting over the northern snow is tied through a long invisible chain, all the way down to a hidden ocean of molten metal beneath the world. Now, out in space, this magnetic shield does something wonderful. When the sun's wind comes streaming toward the earth, it does not crash into us. It meets the shield first, far out beyond the air, and the shield turns it aside. Most of that endless wind of particles simply flows around the earth deflected and swept past us, the way a rock in a river sends the current curving around it to either side. The shield takes the pressure of the wind, and in doing so, is pushed into a particular shape, squashed in a little on the side facing the sun, where the wind presses hardest, and drawn out into a long, streaming tail on the far side, trailing away from the sun like the tail of a comet or the wake behind a boat. Our world sails through the sun's wind inside this great invisible teardrop of its own making, sheltered within it, while the wind streams harmlessly by outside. This shield is one of the quiet reasons our world is gentle enough to live on. Without it, the sun's ceaseless wind would beat directly upon our air, slowly stripping it away over the ages, wearing our world down to something bare and cold. The shield holds that wind at bay, and has done for billions of years, keeping our air and our oceans safe behind it. And here is the turn our whole story has been building toward. The shield is not sealed shut everywhere. It has two places where it is not a solid barrier at all. Two places where it dips down and opens toward the earth. And those two places are the north and the south, the poles. It is there, where the shield opens, that the sun's wind is finally let in. And it is there that the lights are born. Let us look closely then at those two special places where the great shield reaches down toward the earth. Remember the shape of it. The magnetic force streams out from up near one pole, loops all the way around the world through space, and curves back in near the other pole, which means that near the far north and the far south, the invisible lines of the shield are not wrapped protectively around the sides of the world. They are dipping down, plunging toward the surface, funneling inward toward the poles. And where they dip down, they make a kind of open pathway, a way in, leading from far out in space down to the top of our air. So picture what happens when the sun's wind, or one of the sun's great storms, comes sweeping in against the shield. Most of it is turned aside and flows around us, as we said. But some of those racing particles from the sun become caught up in the shield's invisible lines, and once caught, they are guided along them, sliding down the great curving pathways, and drawn inward and downward toward the two poles. The shield gathers them from far out in space and funnels them down, steering the sun's particles toward the north and the south, pouring them gently down those open channels toward the top of the Earth's air. The very shield that turns most of the wind away also acts, near the poles, like a funnel, guiding a share of it down to us. And this is why the northern lights are northern. This is the whole reason they gather where they do. The particles from the sun are funneled down near the poles, and so it is near the poles that they meet our air and make their light. If you could rise high above the earth and look down on the whole planet from far away during a display, you would not see the lights scattered at random. You would see them arranged in a great glowing ring, a soft luminous circle drawn around the top of the world, centered on the pole, and another just like it around the bottom. This ring is where the funneled particles come pouring down most reliably, and it is the reason the lights are a feature of the far north and the far south, and only rarely seen anywhere else. Stand beneath that ring, in the cold northern lands that lie under it, and you have the best seat in the world for the show. The ring is not fixed and unchanging, though. On quiet nights, when the sun's wind is calm, it is a narrow, faint circle drawn tightly around the pole, so that only the most northerly places see much of anything. But when a great storm comes in off the sun, pressing hard on the shield and pouring particles down in floods, The ring swells and brightens and spreads outward, reaching down from the pole toward the more southerly lands. And so, on the nights after one of the sun's larger storms arrives, the lights that usually keep to the far north can come spilling south, appearing in skies that hardly ever see them, surprising people who have never in their lives looked up and found the heavens glowing. The stronger the storm from the sun, the farther from the poles the ring reaches, and the more of the world gets to share in the sight. But wherever it happens, near the pole or far from it, the making of the actual light is the same, and it is the loveliest part of the whole story. Let us go, at last, to the very top of the air, and watch the light itself being born. We have followed the particles all the way from the sun, boiled off its restless surface, flung out in the wind or hurled in a storm, sweeping across the millions of miles, caught by the Earth's shield and funneled down toward the poles. Now, at last, they arrive at the top of our air, and here, in the collision between the sun's particles and our own atmosphere, the light is finally made. It is a surprisingly gentle process, for all the violence that came before, and once you understand it, I think you'll find it rather beautiful. Think, first, about our air. Down here at the surface where we live and breathe, the air is thick and dense, but it does not stop sharply somewhere overhead. Instead, it grows thinner and thinner the higher you go, fading away by degrees until far, far above us, much higher than any cloud, higher than the highest that anything flies. It thins into the merest wisp, the last faint traces of air before space begins. It is up there, in that high and rarefied region, tens and even hundreds of miles above the ground, that the sun's particles finally meet our atmosphere. They come racing down the shield's open pathways, and at the top of the air, they begin to strike the thin scattering of gas that waits there. And here is what happens when they strike. Our air is made of countless tiny units of gas, far too small ever to see. When a fast particle from the sun comes racing down and collides with one of these little units of our air, it strikes it and gives it a jolt of energy, knocking it, so to speak, into a kind of excited, agitated, keyed-up state. But the little unit of air does not stay keyed up for long. Almost at once, it settles back down to its ordinary calm. And as it settles, it lets go of the extra energy it was given. And the way it lets that energy go is by giving off a tiny flash of light. One particle from the sun, one jolt to one unit of air, one tiny flash of light dissipates as it calms again. That is the whole secret. It happens not once but countless billions of times over, all across the top of the sky at once, as the rain of particles from the sun pours down and jolts the high air into glowing, and all those countless tiny flashes together, blending into one soft radiance, are the light you see drifting over the snow. Let yourself feel for a moment both how immense and how gentle this all is. The place where the light is kindled is impossibly high above you, far above the tallest clouds, far above the height where anything flies, tens of miles up at the very lowest edge of the glow, and hundreds of miles up at the top. All of that fierce journey from the sun, all those particles racing across the millions of miles at 1,000,000 miles an hour, comes to its end up there, at the very roof of our air, in a rain of tiny silent flashes. And here is the gentle part. Not one of those particles ever reaches you. They spend themselves entirely, high overhead, giving up their energy to the thin air and kindling it into light. And there their journey ends. The air itself takes the blow, so softly that it answers only in color. By the time anything of the sun's great storm reaches down toward the ground, it has become nothing but light, harmless, soundless, beautiful light, glowing far above you while you stand safe beneath it. And think, too, of the sheer number of it. The soft, even glow you see is not one light, but countless billions of tiny ones, each a single particle from the sun, meeting a single scrap of air, each too faint ever to notice on its own, all of them together blending into that one smooth radiance, the way countless separate drops make a single sheet of falling rain. The whole broad curtain of the aurora filling half the sky is woven out of numberless faint flickers, appearing and fading faster than any eye could follow, so many and so quick that they melt into one calm river of color. There is something I find almost tender in it. The most powerful forces in all our corner of space, the storms of a star crossing the void at unthinkable speed, arrive at our world and are met and caught and turned so high above us into the softest thing imaginable, a slow glow drifting over the snow, all that power spent gently, out of reach, doing you no harm at all, asking nothing of you but that you look up. The fiercest thing becomes the calmest thing. If you have ever seen one of those glowing signs made of colored tubes, the kind that shine in shop windows at night, then you have seen, in a small and homely way, the very same thing that lights the northern sky. In those signs, a gas is sealed inside a glass tube, and it is given a jolt of energy, and it glows. And the color of the glow depends on which gas is inside. The northern lights are that same trick, played out on the grandest possible stage. The sky itself is the glowing tube. The particles from the sun supply the jolt of energy, and the thin, high air is the gas that glows. The whole top of the world's atmosphere becomes, for a while, a wide and gentle glowing sign, lit from within by the touch of the sun, painting the darkness in soft and living color. I find something wonderfully peaceful in knowing this. That great shimmering curtain, so huge and so strange, is in the end only our own high air, quietly glowing as it is touched by pieces of the sun and settling back to calm. It is a meeting, the meeting of our star and our air, taking place far above the sleeping world, written across the night in light. And the particular colors it glows, the tender greens and the deep reds and the rare violets, are not random either. They come from what our air is made of, and from how high up the meeting happens. So let us look, next, at where those lovely colors come from. The northern lights are most often green, a soft, glowing, faintly unearthly green, the color people remember most and describe most often. But they are not always green, and they are not only green. In a strong display, the green may be crowned with red, or edged with rose and pink, or shot through here and there with deep blues and violets. Each of these colors comes from a particular gas in our air, glowing at a particular height, and once you know the simple key to it, you can read the colors of the sky like a kind of gentle map of the air itself. The green, that most common and most beloved color, comes from one particular gas in our atmosphere, the same gas, as it happens, that we most need to breathe, glowing high above us where the air is thin. When the sun's particles jolt this gas, in the great broad layer where it is most common, tens of miles above the ground, it glows in that soft and lovely green, because that layer is wide and the gas within it is plentiful. Green is the color the lights wear most of the time. It is the everyday dress of the aurora, the shade you are most likely to see on an ordinary good night, a gentle green ribbon low across the north. The reds come from that very same gas, but far higher up near the very top of the air, where it is thinnest of all, hundreds of miles above the world. Up there, in that highest and most rarefied region, the same gas that glows green lower down glows instead a deep and dusky red. So when you see a great display crowned with red above the green, you are seeing the very highest air of all, the last faint traces of our atmosphere before space, lit up and glowing far overhead. The red often sits above the green like a soft canopy, because it is made higher up, and because it takes a stronger storm to set the highest air glowing. Those red crowns tend to appear only in the more powerful displays. They are among the most prized and beautiful sights the aurora offers. Between these main colors, at the edges where one gives way to another, softer blended shades can appear, and these are some of the most delicate of all. Where the green below meets the red above, the two can mingle into gentle pinks and warm roses along the upper fringe of a curtain, so that the whole thing seems tipped with the colors of a sunrise. And no two displays ever wear quite the same mix. One night, the sky may glow a pure and simple green, low and quiet on the horizon. Another night, in a stronger storm, it may be layered and shot through with rose and crimson and violet all at once, shifting from one moment to the next as the curtains move. Part of the wonder of the lights is that you can never quite know, until they come, which colors the sky will choose to wear. And then there are the blues and the violets, rarer still, which come from a different gas in the air, glowing lower down, nearer the bottom edge of the display. These deep, cool colors are harder to see, and often faint, but in a strong and active aurora, they can fringe the lower edges of the curtains in shades of blue and purple, giving the whole thing an even richer, stranger beauty. So a full display, at its finest, can be a layered thing. Violet and blue along the lower fringes, the broad familiar green through the middle, and a deep red crown arching over the top, each color a different gas, at a different height, all glowing at once as the sun's particles pour down through them. When you look up at those colors, you are reading the makeup of your own sky, layer by layer, painted in light. The green is the great middle air, the red is the highest air of all. The blue and violet are lower down. It is the atmosphere itself, revealed in color, telling you quietly what it is made of and how high it reaches. We have talked about where the lights come from and why they glow the colors they do. But anyone who has stood beneath a real display will tell you that the colors are only half of it. The other half, perhaps the more haunting half, is the movement. The way the light shifts and folds and dances across the sky, never still, never quite the same from one moment to the next. So let us spend a little while simply watching the shapes the aurora makes, and understanding, gently, why it moves the way it does. Most often, the lights begin as a quiet arc, a smooth, curving band of glow, low across the northern sky, gently bowed like a faint rainbow made of green light. This is the aurora at its calmest, the shape it most often wears when it first appears and when it is fading away. For a while, it may simply hang there, a soft, luminous arch, brightening and dimming a little, content to rest low on the horizon. On a quiet night, this pale arc may be all you get, and it is lovely enough on its own, a band of soft light lying along the edge of the world. But when the display grows stronger, the arc comes to life. It begins to develop folds and pleats along its length, gathering itself into great vertical draperies, so that instead of a smooth band you see a huge hanging curtain, rippling and swaying as though a slow breeze were moving through it. These curtains are the classic form of the northern lights, the shape people picture when they imagine them. Great folded veils of light, hung across the sky, drifting and shifting and reshaping themselves moment by moment. And they are made of countless fine vertical rays, thin streaks of light running up and down, gathered side by side like the folds of a great pleated cloth, or the pipes of some vast and silent organ. Those rays trace, more or less, the invisible lines of the Earth's shield reaching down from above, so that in the shapes of the light, you are seeing, faintly drawn, the very structure of the magnetic pathways down which the particles are pouring. And now and then, if the display is strong, and you are standing in just the right place, something quite breathtaking happens overhead. The rays of light seem to gather and converge directly above you, all pointing up toward a single point at the top of the sky, spreading out from it in every direction, like the ribs of a great glowing umbrella, or the spokes of a wheel of light turning slowly overhead. This is the crown of the aurora, seen when the display is directly above you, and you are gazing straight up into it. People who witness it often describe it as the most overwhelming sight of all, the whole sky seeming to open and pour down light from a single point, wheeling gently over their heads. As for why it all moves so, why the curtains ripple and the rays shimmer, and the whole sky seems restless and alive, it is because the story we have been telling is not a still one. Out in space, the sun's wind is gusting and shifting. The great storm clouds are sweeping past, and the Earth's shield is being pressed and rattled and reshaped by all of it, its invisible pathways trembling and bending. And the light, remember, is made along those pathways, wherever the particles happen to be pouring down. So as the pathways shift and the streams of particles waver, the glowing curtains hung upon them shift and waver too, brightening here, fading there, folding, rippling, dancing. The movement you see in the sky is the unseen weather of space, made visible at last. When the aurora dances, it is showing you, in the only way you could ever witness it, the restless meeting of the sun's wind and the Earth's shield, playing out silently in the dark high above you. It is space itself you are watching, made gentle and green and slow, drifting over the quiet snow. Of all the strange and lovely things about the northern lights, there is one that surprises people more than any other, and it is not something you see at all. It is something you don't hear. For here is a sight that fills half the sky, that ripples and surges and dances with what looks like tremendous energy, that seems for all the world as though it ought to crackle and roar like a great fire overhead. And yet it makes no sound whatsoever. The lights dance in perfect total silence. The sky blazes and folds and pours down light, and all the while the night stays as quiet as it was before, with no sound but your own breath and the small creak of the cold. It is one of the eeriest and most peaceful things about the whole experience, this great and living display, unfolding without the faintest whisper. The reason for the silence is simply how far away it all is. We tend to think of the lights as though they were just overhead, close enough to touch, because they fill the sky so completely, but they are not close at all. The glow is made high, high above the world, far higher than the clouds, far higher than any bird or any craft that flies, tens of miles up at its lowest edge and hundreds of miles up at its highest. The lights hang at the very top of our air and beyond, in a region so high and so thin that it is almost space itself. And sound cannot cross that gulf. Sound needs air to carry it. Thick air, like the air down here at the surface, and there is almost none up where the lights are made, and only the emptiest reaches of the upper sky between them and you. So the light comes down to your eyes across all that distance, but no sound ever could. The display is not silent because nothing is happening. It is silent because it is happening so very far away, in air too thin to carry even a whisper. There is an old puzzle tangled up in this, worth a gentle mention. Every so often, across the years, people standing beneath a strong display have sworn they heard something, a faint crackle, a soft hiss, a whisper of sound seeming to keep time with the lights. For a long time this was dismissed as pure imagination, and given what we've just said about the great height and the thin air, you can see why. And yet the reports keep coming, from careful and sober people, too often to shrug away entirely. The best thought now is that on rare occasions, during the very strongest displays, something subtle may happen much closer to the ground, near the watchers themselves, that makes the faintest of sounds. A delicate effect, right down at the surface, quite separate from the far-off glow above. It remains a genuine little mystery, not fully settled, and I rather like that it does. But for the great sweep of it, for nearly everyone who has ever stood beneath the lights, the abiding memory is of that profound and lovely quiet, a sky on fire with soft colour, and not a sound in all the world. All this while we have spoken of the northern lights, as though the glow belonged only to the top of the world. But you'll remember that the Earth shield dips down toward the Earth at both poles, north and south alike, and that particles from the sun are funneled down to each of them. And so, there is, of course, another set of lights entirely, a mirror to the northern ones, glowing over the bottom of the world, around the southern pole. They are the southern lights, and they are every bit as beautiful as their northern twin, though far fewer people have ever seen them. The reason so few see them is simply a matter of where the land lies. Around the northern pole, there is a great deal of inhabited country, northern lands where people live and travel and can step outside on a winter's night and look up. But around the southern pole, there is very little land at all, and almost no one lives there. The far south is mostly open ocean, wild and empty and cold, ringed at its heart by the great frozen continent at the very bottom of the world, where hardly anyone ever goes. So the southern lights spend most of their lives glowing over empty seas and lonely ice, with no one beneath them to look up and wonder. They dance just as brightly as the northern ones, in the same soft greens and reds, ringed around the southern pole in the same great glowing circle. But they do so, for the most part, in solitude, unseen and unremarked, night after night, at the bottom of the world. There is something quietly moving in that thought, I always find, that right now, as you rest, on the far side of the earth, over the cold southern ocean and the empty ice, the very same lights are very likely dancing, the same silent curtains, the same drifting green, the same restless meeting of the sun's wind and the earth's shield, with almost no one there to see. When a great storm comes in off the sun, it lights both ends of the world at once, north and south together, two glowing rings blooming on opposite sides of the planet in the very same hour. The northern one may be admired by 100 upturned faces. The southern one glows on alone over the ice and the waves. But they are twins, born of exactly the same thing, and neither is any less lovely for who happens to be watching. The lights of the far south are one of the great unwatched wonders of our world. We have talked about the sun as restless and stormy, forever churning and tangling its magnetism, and now and then breaking out in flares and storms. But there is a deeper rhythm to all that restlessness, a slow and steady beat that the sun keeps over the years, and it shapes how often and how brightly the northern lights appear. The sun, it turns out, has seasons of a kind, long stretches when it is calm and quiet, and long stretches when it is stormy and active, following one another in a slow and dependable cycle. The rhythm goes like this. Over a span of about 11 years, the sun swings from quiet to stormy and back again. For a few years, it is relatively calm. Few sunspots freckle its face, its magnetism is untangled and settled, and it breaks out in flares and storms only rarely. Then, gradually, over the following years, it grows more and more active. Sunspots multiply, crowding onto its surface. Its magnetism winds itself tighter and more tangled, and flares and great storms come more and more often, flung out into space in greater numbers. It builds to a peak of restlessness, a stormy season, you might say, when the sun is at its most active and most turbulent. And then, slowly, over the years that follow, it settles down again toward calm, the sunspots fading, the storms growing rare, until it reaches its quiet season once more. And then the whole slow swing begins again. About 11 years from one calm to the next, over and over patiently, for as long as there has been a sun. And this long, slow breath of the sun reaches all the way down to the lights above the snow. In the sun's quiet years, the northern lights are rarer and fainter, keeping mostly to the far north, appearing only now and then. But in the sun's stormy years, around the peak of its cycle, everything changes. With so many more flares and storms being flung out into space, far more of them come sweeping past the earth, and the lights blaze up more often and more brightly, and the great glowing ring swells and reaches farther from the pole, spilling down into more southerly skies. So the northern lights, too, have their good years and their lean ones, rising and falling in step with the sun's own long rhythm. Those who chase the lights learn to watch that rhythm, and to seek them out in the sun's stormy seasons, when the sky is most likely to come alive. It is a lovely thing to think that the glow above the northern snow keeps time, faithfully, with a slow beat, kept by a star 93 million miles away, that the sky's quiet moods rise and fall to the breathing of the sun. Perhaps, listening tonight, you have never seen the northern lights, and find yourself quietly wishing you might one day. It is one of the loveliest wishes there is, and a very achievable one. And so let me tell you gently how people go about it, not as a plan you need to make tonight, but as a soft daydream to drift on, a picture of a journey you might take someday. The first thing is simply to be in the right part of the world. Remember the great glowing ring that sits around the pole. To stand a good chance of seeing the lights often and well, you want to be beneath that ring, in the northern lands that lie under it, places near the top of the world, like the north of Iceland, or the far reaches of Scandinavia, or the northern stretches of Canada and Alaska, where people have learned to watch for the lights as others watch for the weather. In those places, on a good night, the aurora is not a rare marvel, but a familiar visitor, expected and welcomed. You need not live there, of course. Many people simply travel north for a while in the dark season and wait. And then the second thing is darkness and patience. The lights are soft, far softer than the glare of a town, and so they show themselves best far from any city, out where the night is truly dark and the stars are thick overhead. You want a clear sky, with few clouds to hide the glow, and the long, dark nights of the colder months, when darkness comes early and stays late and gives the lights the black canvas they need. And then, mostly, you wait. This is the part no one can hurry. You dress warmly, far more warmly than you think you need, and you go out under the open sky, and you look to the north and you wait, sometimes for an hour, sometimes for many, sometimes through several nights before the sky obliges. The lights keep their own counsel. They come when they come. But here is the thing that everyone who has done it will tell you. The waiting is not the price of the lights. The waiting is part of the gift. To stand out in the deep cold of a northern night, wrapped up warm, your breath rising, the snow gone blue in the starlight, the whole wide sky arched over you and utterly silent. That is already a rare and beautiful thing, long before any glow appears. And then, when at last it does come, when that first pale arc lifts along the northern horizon and begins ever so slowly to brighten and to move, the long wait folds itself into the wonder and becomes part of the memory forever. Those who chase the lights learn to seek them in the sun's stormier years, when its long, slow cycle is near its peak, and the sky is most likely to come alive. But whenever you go, and however long you wait, the lights, when they come, are worth every cold and patient hour. It is one of the few great sights of the world that asks you to be still and quiet and patient and to simply look up, which is, when you think of it, exactly the frame of mind we are practicing here tonight. Every so often, far more rarely than the ordinary run of storms, the sun lets loose something truly enormous, a storm so vast and so perfectly aimed that it reaches down and touches the whole world at once. These great storms are rare, and I want to tell you about them gently, because there is nothing here to lie awake worrying over. But they are part of the story, and one of them in particular, a very long time ago, gave the world a night it never forgot. Well over a century and a half ago, before there were any of the machines and wires we depend on today, the sun flung out one of the mightiest storms ever recorded. It came racing across space and struck the earth with tremendous force, and it lit the skies in a way that had scarcely ever been seen. The northern lights, that night, and the nights around it, did not keep to the far north at all. They came flooding down across the whole world, blazing in skies that had never known them, glowing over warm southern lands, over places near the middle of the earth where the Aurora simply never goes. The lights were so bright in some places that people woke in the small hours thinking it was dawn, or that some great fire was burning just beyond the horizon. Birds stirred and sang, thinking morning had come. All across the world, people stepped outside and stood beneath a sky on fire with soft color, most of them with no idea at all what they were seeing. It was, by every account, one of the most beautiful nights the sky has ever given the earth. In that long ago time, such a storm did little but fill the world with wonder, for there was almost nothing built that it could disturb. The one new thing it touched was the earliest system of wires that had been strung up to carry messages across long distances. And along those wires, that night, strange currents ran, sparking and crackling, so that the machines behaved oddly and the messages went astray. It was a small curiosity then, easily shrugged off, but it was a quiet hint of something we understand better now. For today, of course, our world is laced all over with wires and machines and delicate instruments, and a truly great storm off the sun can nudge and disturb these systems, can trouble the flow of electricity, or unsettle the machines we rely on. This is nothing to lie awake fearing. The very worst of these storms are rare, and we now watch the sun closely and carefully, day and night, precisely so that we can see its storms coming and prepare for them. Whole teams of patient people keep a constant eye on our star, watching for its flares and its great outbound clouds, ready to give warning. So the sun's restlessness, which once only painted the skies, is now something we quietly keep watch over, not out of fear, but out of care. The way you might keep a weather eye on the sky before a long journey. But I'd rather leave you, on this point, with the wonder rather than the worry. Because the deepest meaning of that long ago night is a beautiful one, that the same sun which warms your face by day can, on the rarest of nights, reach out and set the whole sky of the world aglow at once, north and south and everywhere between, in colours soft enough to sing to. It has done so before, across the long ages, and it will surely do so again some night far in the future. And on that night, wherever they are, a great many people will step outside and look up, and stand quietly together beneath a glowing sky, sharing a wonder as old as the earth itself. Here is a thought to widen the sky a little before we begin to settle toward sleep. The northern lights are not ours alone. The earth is not the only world that glows. All across our neighborhood of space, other worlds are wearing their own auroras, painting their own skies in light, for exactly the same reasons ours does. And some of them do it on a scale that makes our lights look small. Remember the simple recipe for an aurora. You need a star breathing out a wind of particles, a world with a magnetic shield to catch and funnel that wind, and an atmosphere for the particles to strike and set aglow. Wherever those three things come together, the lights can bloom, and they come together on other worlds besides our own. The great giant planets of the outer solar system, those giant balls of gas far out in the cold beyond, have powerful magnetic shields of their own and deep, thick atmospheres. And so they too have auroras ringed around their poles, just as ours are ringed around the Earth's. On the largest of them, the mightiest planet of all, the auroras are vast beyond anything we know, glowing steadily around its poles with a power our own gentle lights could never match. Great, permanent crowns of light, wheeling around the top and bottom of a world you could fit our whole Earth into many times over. We have seen these distant auroras, faintly, with our finest instruments, and with the patient craft we have sent out across the solar system to visit those far worlds. And it is a strange and lovely fellowship to feel, lying here on a quiet night, that ours is not the only world with glowing poles, that out there in the dark, right now, on worlds no one will ever stand upon, the same meeting of star wind and magnetic shield is painting the same kind of light across alien skies, greens and reds and colors we have no names for, glowing over clouds and storms no eye will ever see up close. The northern lights above our own snow are one small local voice in a much larger, quieter chorus. All across space, worlds are glowing at their poles. Ours just happens to be the one we can walk out beneath and wrap up warm and watch. It is worth pausing before we drift toward sleep on the simple wonder that we know any of this at all. The whole long chain I have described to you tonight, the wind off the sun, the shield around the earth, the funneling down to the poles, the glowing of the high air, none of it is visible. You cannot see the solar wind, or the magnetic shield, or the particles pouring down. All anyone can actually see is the light in the sky. And yet, from that one visible thing, and a great deal of patient looking, people slowly worked out the whole hidden story. How that was done is a quiet marvel of its own. For most of history, as I said, the lights were a pure mystery. The first real clue came from a small and curious thing. People noticed that when the lights were dancing overhead, a compass needle, which normally sits so still and faithful, would tremble and stir, as though something were disturbing the Earth's own magnetism. That was the first thread, a hint that the lights were somehow tied to magnetism, to the same invisible force that guides the compass. It was not much, but it was a beginning, and careful people pulled on that thread for a long time. The next great clue came from watching the sun, as people began, over the years, to keep careful count of the dark spots on the sun's face and careful record of when the lights appeared. Someone noticed that the two rose and fell together. In the years when sunspots were many, the lights came often. In the years when the sun's face was clear, the lights grew rare. The glow in our sky was keeping time with the storms of the sun. And now and then, after a particularly great disturbance was seen on the sun, a day or two would pass, and then the lights would blaze up, and the compasses would swing, as though something had left the sun, crossed the gulf, and arrived. Slowly, from clues like these, the astonishing idea took shape, that the lights above our northern snow were somehow caused by our own star, reaching across all that emptiness to touch our sky. Piece by patient piece, the rest was worked out. By watching a single display from two different places at once, and comparing the views, people measured how high the lights really were, and found them far higher than anyone had guessed, up at the very top of the air. Brave expeditions traveled north into the cold and the dark, simply to study the lights up close, night after freezing night. And at last, in our own age, when we learned to send craft up above the air entirely, out into the space where the wind and the shield actually live, we could measure the whole hidden chain directly. Feel the sun's wind streaming past. Map the great shield and its open pathways at the poles, and watch the particles pour down. Everything the patient watchers had pieced together from the ground was confirmed, out there in the dark, where the story really happens. It is a fine thing to remember, I think, as you lie here, that a wonder as far away as the sun and as invisible as a magnetic field was slowly understood by nothing grander than careful looking and patient thinking, and a great many people standing out in the cold, night after night, wondering and refusing to stop asking why. Long before anyone knew a single thing about the sun's wind or the earth's shield, people in the far north lived their whole lives beneath these lights, and they could not help but wonder what they were. And so, in every northern land, people told stories to explain the glow in the sky. And those old stories, though we know now they are not the literal truth of the matter, are lovely things in themselves, and worth remembering on a night like this. To many of the peoples of the far north, the lights seemed clearly alive, and so they imagined them as living things, or as the doings of the living. In some tellings, the shifting curtains overhead were spirits at play, or the souls of those who had gone before, dancing in the sky, or gathered around great fires in the heavens, or lit by torches as they went on some journey through the dark. In others, the lights were the reflections of great fires, or the flashing of some great creature's movement across the northern sky. Some watched the lights and felt watched in return, and spoke to them, or hushed their children in their presence, or found in them signs and messages about the days to come. Others simply delighted in them, and sang about them, and welcomed them as a familiar wonder of the long winter nights. Across many different peoples and many different tongues, the lights were woven into story and song, treated as something meaningful, something to be reckoned with, something not quite of the ordinary world. The very name we most often give them carries a little of this old wonder. The word we use, Aurora, is the name of an old goddess of the dawn, for the lights glowing softly along the horizon reminded people of a strange dawn come at the wrong hour, a light in the sky where no sunrise should be. It is a fitting name, I think, a false, gentle dawn, drifting in the darkness, glowing where it has no business to glow. And there is something I find quietly moving in this long human history of looking up. For countless generations, in the cold and the dark, people stood beneath these very same lights that you might one day stand beneath yourself and felt exactly the same wonder you would feel, the same catch of the breath, the same hush, the same sense of something vast and beautiful and alive moving silently overhead. They did not know what we now know, that the glow is our own high air, lit by the touch of the sun, guided down by the turning of an iron sea at the heart of the world. But they did not need to know all that to feel the wonder of it. The knowing and the wonder are not enemies. If anything, I think the true story only deepens the marvel. And whether it is seen by someone long ago who called it the dance of spirits, or by you on some future night, knowing it for the meeting of a star and a world, the sight is the same, and the feeling is the same, and it joins you across all those years to everyone who has ever stood in the cold and looked up and been quietly amazed. We have travelled a very long way tonight, you and I, out to the sun and back again, down the long invisible river of its wind, in through the great shield of our world, and down its open pathways to the poles, up to the very top of the air where the light is born, and all the way to other worlds glowing in the dark. And now it is time to let all of it go soft and quiet, and to come home, and to rest. Think for a moment of the whole long chain we have followed, and how much has to happen, and how far things have to travel to make one soft green ribbon of light above the snow. Our restless star churns and tangles its own magnetism and flings a breath of itself out into space. That breath crosses 93 million miles of emptiness. It meets the invisible shield woven by the turning of an iron sea deep inside our world, and is caught and funneled down toward the poles. It strikes the thin high air at the top of the sky and jolts it, and the air glows as it settles back to calm, green and red and violet, drifting and folding and dancing, silent above the sleeping land. All of that, the whole enormous journey, for one quiet light in the northern night. And it is happening right now, tonight, over the far north and the far south of our world, whether anyone is there to see it or not. The sky quietly glowing, as it has for as long as there has been a sun to breathe and a world to catch its breath. There is something in that I find deeply restful, and I hope you do too. That the same sun which warmed your day is, even now, painting the tops of the world in gentle colour. That our planet is wrapped, always, in a great invisible shield that keeps us safe and, at its edges, turns the danger into beauty. That the most powerful forces in all our corner of space, the storms of a star, arrive at our door softened into something you could fall asleep beneath. A slow green glow, a drifting curtain, a false and gentle dawn. The universe is not always harsh. Sometimes it reaches all the way across the dark simply to leave a little light hanging in the sky above the snow. So let your body grow heavy now, and let the bed take all your weight. Let your breathing slow of its own accord, in and gently out. Let the thoughts of the day drift off and grow faint, like the last pale rays of an aurora fading back into the dark. There is nothing you need to hold on to, nothing you need to carry into sleep. The sun will go on breathing, and the shield will go on turning its wind to light, and the lights will go on dancing over the quiet poles, all through the night, without any help or worry from you at all. You can simply let go and rest, and let the sky keep watch. Sleep well, wherever you are beneath this wide and glowing world. May your night be soft, and your rest be deep. And I'll be here again, whenever you'd like a little quiet company on the way down into the dark. Good night now. Rest, and let the lights drift on without you.